Have you ever thrown a stone into a pond and watched it sink, but then thrown a piece of wood and watched it float? Why does that happen? Well, the answer lies in two fascinating concepts: buoyancy and density. Buoyancy is the force that makes things float. Picture it as an invisible hand that holds objects up in the water. On the other hand, density is how much stuff is packed into a certain space. If an object is denser than the liquid it's in, it'll sink. If it's less dense, it'll float. Think about a chunky chocolate chip cookie. The chocolate chips are like denser objects that sink, while the rest of the cookie is like less dense objects that float. It's all about the battle between the weight of the object and the buoyancy force trying to lift it up. So now you know why some things sink while others float. But what about different materials? Let's find out. Scene script. Think about gold and lead. They're both heavy, aren't they? But do they float or sink? Let's dive into it. Gold and lead are both denser than water, which means they will sink when placed in water. Density is the amount of mass an object has in a given space. Because gold and lead are packed with more mass in their space than water, they sink right to the bottom. But weight isn't the only thing at play here. It's also about how the weight of the object relates to the amount of water it displaces. This is called buoyancy. If an object is denser than the water it displaces, like gold or lead, down it goes. So, it's not just about how heavy an object is, but how that weight compares to the water it's in. So, no matter how small a piece of gold or lead you have, it will always sink in water. But what about other materials? Ice cubes in your drink, or a wooden log in a river. They both float, but why? Here's the thing, it's all about density. When objects are less dense than the liquid they are placed in, they float. This is the case with ice and wood, which are both less dense than water. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, isn't ice made from water? How can it be less dense? Well, it's a fascinating aspect of water's unique properties. When water freezes, it forms a crystalline structure. This structure is spacious, allowing more room between the water molecules, thus reducing its density. Wood, on the other hand, has a different story. It's filled with tiny air pockets which reduce its overall density, making it lighter than water. It's interesting, isn't it? How ice and wood, despite their differences, both float. But we're not done yet. Stay tuned for more about the wonders of floating and sinking. Rubber ducks in a bath or foam in a pool. They're not heavy, but why do they float? You see, it's all about density. Just like ice and wood, rubber and foam are also less dense than water. But what does being less dense really mean? Picture a crowd at a concert. The more people squeezed into a space, the denser that area is. Now imagine a park, where people are spread out. That's less dense. In the same way, the atoms in rubber and foam are spread out, making them less dense than water. But there's another factor at play here: the structure of these materials. Rubber and foam are filled with tiny air pockets. These pockets help to decrease the overall density, acting like tiny life jackets that keep them afloat. So whether it's a rubber duck bobbing in your bathtub, or foam floating in your swimming pool, it's all thanks to the magic of density and structure. Who knew that the secret to floating was being less dense than water? Now you know why your rubber duck doesn't sink during bath time. So why do some things float and some sink? Well, it all boils down to two key concepts: buoyancy and density. Buoyancy is the force that allows objects to float. It's like a big invisible hand that pushes up against gravity. Density, on the other hand, is how much stuff is packed into a certain space. Let's think back to our examples. Gold and lead are heavyweights, dense and compact, which is why they sink. Ice and wood are less dense than the water they're in, so they float. Rubber and foam? They're full of tiny air pockets, making them less dense than water, so they bob on the surface. So whether something sinks or floats is determined by its density compared to the liquid it's in. If it's less dense, it floats. If it's denser, it sinks. So there you have it, the secret behind why things float or sink. Remember, it's all about density. Now the next time you throw a stone or a piece of wood into a pond, you'll know exactly why they behave the way they do.